Your cat stares at the corner of your room at 2 in the morning, hair standing, eyes locked on something you can't see, and you tell yourself it's nothing. The Book of Enoch lists every animal that matters to the history of the world. Nearly 20 species, each one assigned a role in a vision that covers everything from Adam to the end of days. The cat is the only one not on that list. I went looking for why, not on the internet. In the actual text, chapters 85 through 90, where Enoch maps every creature to a nation or a judgment. And what I found isn't that the writer forgot the cat, it's that 4 ancient traditions separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles all describe the cat the same way. Not born, not bred, placed. That word keeps showing up in texts that have no connection to each other. And if you don't know why, you're missing the thread that holds all of this together. If you want more videos like this one, hit like and subscribe. It makes a real difference for us. This one's been sitting in my notes for about 6 days straight, and I kept waiting for it to stop being strange. It didn't. Speaking of old texts, if you want the full uncensored Ethiopian Bible, all 88 books, is on the website. The personal birth date readings are there too. Links in the description, or scan the QR code. Let me start with what the Book of Enoch actually says about animals. 1 Enoch chapter 7 verse 5. The Nephilim, the giant offspring of the Watchers who came down from heaven and took human wives, reach a point where human food isn't enough. They've consumed everything people can grow, and then the text says they sinned against birds, animals, creeping things and fish. Most scholars read that as violence. Nicholsberg, in his Hermenia commentary, treats the whole passage as an escalation. The giants eat human provisions, then they eat humans, then they turn on the animal kingdom, then they drink blood. Each step worse than the one before. I've read Nicholsberg on this. I respect the work, but the phrase is sin against, not devour or destroy. The Aramaic tradition behind this text had perfectly good words for killing. It had words for eating. The writer of chapter 7 used a different word. He used the one that means violation. That's my read, not Nicholsberg's. His is cleaner and probably safer. I'm just telling you, mine doesn't go away when I sit with his. Why that word matters will make more sense after you see what comes about 80 chapters later in a section most people skip entirely. 1 Enoch chapters 85 through 90 contains something called the animal apocalypse. I need to slow down here and walk you through it properly, because if you don't understand how this allegory works, the rest of this video won't land. The animal apocalypse is a dream vision. Enoch sees the entire history of the world from Adam to the end of days, and every single person in it is an animal. Not randomly. The system runs on the clean and unclean categories from Leviticus. Israel's always clean, always domesticated. The enemies of Israel are always wild or unclean. Adam is a white bull, Eve is a white heifer, Cain is a black calf, Abel is a red calf, red for the blood. The whole patriarchal line runs through bulls. When the nation of Israel shows up in the story, they become sheep. And when the empires that attack Israel enter the vision, each one gets its own predator. Lions for Babylon, eagles for the Greeks, wolves, hyenas, foxes, wild boars, falcons, vultures, kites, ravens. Scholars like Daniel Olson and Patrick Tiller have mapped these animals to specific empires and specific centuries, and they don't always agree on which animal goes where. But the system itself is consistent. Every creature in the vision serves a role. Every creature means something. Except the cat. The domestic cat does not appear in the animal apocalypse, not as Israel, not as an enemy, not as a guardian, a messenger, a symbol or a warning, in a text that assigns theological weight to nearly 20 species of animal. The cat gets nothing. If you grew up reading scripture, think about when you last saw a house cat mentioned anywhere in any biblical text, not a lion, a house cat. That absence is stranger than you'd expect once you actually look for it. The simple explanation is that the writer didn't care about cats. They weren't livestock. They weren't military threats. They didn't carry symbolic weight in the Levitical system. But there's another possibility, and this is the one I can't stop circling. What if the cat isn't in the allegory because it doesn't fit the categories at all? Clean or unclean, predator or prey, Israel or enemy, What if whoever wrote the animal apocalypse left the cat out because it didn't belong to the system the vision was built on? That is speculation. I'm flagging it clearly. The text does not make that claim. The text just leaves the cat out. And I'm the one asking why. And before you tell me cats just weren't important enough to make it into any ancient religious text, there is exactly one mention. One in the entire biblical and apocryphal record. It's in the letter of Jeremiah, a Hellenistic text that was folded into the Book of Baruch. The writer is mocking Babylonian idols, proving they're powerless, and he says that bats, swallows, birds, and cats land on the bodies and heads of the statues. The Greek word he uses is ailuroi, that's the cat, and his point is simple. These idols are so dead that common animals perch on them like furniture. That's it. That's the one time. In thousands of pages of scripture, apocrypha, and pseudepigrapha, the cat shows up once, and it's sitting on the head of a false god, proving the god is fake. I don't know what to do with that, but I notice it, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't. The first place I went looking for the cat outside of Enoch was Mesopotamia, and what I found there didn't settle anything. There's an ancient omen series called Shuma Alu, which means roughly if a city is situated on a height. Over 120 clay tablets. Somewhere around 10,000 individual omens housed in the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. The series covers terrestrial signs, snakes in your house, the direction a lizard runs, the sound your door makes when it opens. It's an encyclopedia of everyday life and what each disruption might predict. Tablet 45 is the one about cats. The omens describe a cat showing up in your home, a cat sitting on a threshold, a cat sitting in a bedroom, a cat making sounds it shouldn't make, barking like a dog, grunting like a pig, braying like a donkey. The diviners treated each one as a sign, good or bad, and the cat's behavior was the signal. Now, the tablets around tablet 45 cover other animals too. Snakes get several tablets, scorpions, dogs, pigs, lizards. The series treats all of them the same way as disruptions in the normal order of everyday life that a trained diviner could read. But there's something about how the cat omens are written that's different from the rest, and it took me a while to see it. The other animals do things. The snake enters, the dog howls, the pig wanders. The cat doesn't do. The cat is, it's situated, it's present. The grammar puts it somewhere and leaves it there, as if the cat's existence in a location is itself the omen. The Akkadian word used for the cat's presence is shakanu. It means to place or to set or to be situated, depending on the form. The word does all three, and here is the part that caught me. In these omens, no human subject places the cat. Nobody carries it in. Nobody sets it down. The cat is placed, and the sentence doesn't tell you by whom. I spent a full afternoon going through entries on the cuneiform digital library trying to find a parallel omen where a dog or a pig uses the same subjectless construction. I didn't find one. Dogs have owners in the omens. Pigs wander in from somewhere. The cat just appears, positioned by nobody, the grammar names. I'm not a cuneiformist. I'm aware that Akkadian syntax handles subjects differently than English, and the absence of a named agent in one verb form might not mean what it looks like. I don't have a firm position on this, and I'm not going to build one out of a language I can't read fluently. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Do you think ancient scribes left the subject out of that sentence by accident, or do you think they just didn't know who put the cat there? I've gone back and forth on it more times than I want to admit. What I didn't expect was to find the oldest version of the cats were placed here story in a tradition most people watching this have probably never heard of. In the 9th century, an Arab naturalist named Al-Jahiz recorded a story that had been circulating for generations. In the 14th century, a scholar named Kamal al-Din al-Damiri wrote a fuller version. Both are real, named authors in real surviving books. The story is about Noah's Ark. The Ark had a mouse problem, a serious one. Mice were eating through the provisions and gnawing through the wood of the hull. Noah prayed for a solution. God told him to touch the nose of the lion. Noah did. The lion sneezed, and out of its nostrils came two cats, one male, one female, who immediately went after the mice and saved the ship. I know how that sounds. I'm telling you anyway, because this isn't some internet thread with no author and no date. This is a recorded Islamic tradition, centuries old, preserved by named scholars in named works. And the structure of the story is exactly what the title of this video is about. The cats were not born, they were not discovered. They were produced on purpose to perform a specific function, and they were placed among humans by a direct act of God. Now fold that back onto Shuma'alu. The cat is placed in the omen. No subject does the placing, and here's a completely separate religious tradition from a different faith entirely, saying the cat was placed by God himself. I'm not claiming one text knew about the other. I'm saying the same shape keeps appearing, and that shape is old. And once you see that shape, you start seeing it everywhere. The Egyptians, who came after the Sumerians by roughly 1,000 years, treated the cat with a reverence that still doesn't make sense if you think of it as just an animal. The goddess Bastet, with a cat's head and a woman's body, was the protector of the household, the guardian of children, the keeper of the home against the entry of evil. The Egyptians mummified their cats. They buried them in dedicated cat cemeteries. When a household cat died, the family shaved their eyebrows, the same gesture of grief they used for human family members. And in dynastic Egypt, the penalty for killing a cat, even by accident, was death. That's not how you treat a mouser. That's how you treat something you believe is doing work you can't see. The Talmud, centuries later, takes a completely different approach. Baba Kama 80b discusses cats the way you discuss a tool. They're permitted in the home because they kill mice and snakes. That's it. Pest control. No ceremony, no reverence, no theology. Just a useful animal doing a useful job. Two cultures looking at the same creature. One remembers something the other has already forgotten. That's my read, not theirs. But the gap between Egyptian reverence and Talmudic pragmatism is enormous, and nobody I've found has a clean explanation for why the same animal got treated so differently by people reading many of the same scriptures. And the thing that really got to me, the thing I keep coming back to on nights when I should be doing something more productive, is that the physical evidence pulled out of the ground on the island of Cyprus tells a version of this story that nobody in the ancient world could have written down, because nobody in the ancient world knew it existed. And this is where the whole argument either holds together or falls apart, depending on how much weight you give a grave that's 9,500 years old. In 2004, French archaeologists excavating a Neolithic settlement on Cyprus, a site called Shillourokambos, found a human burial dating to roughly 7,500 BC. 40 centimeters from the human skeleton, carefully arranged, not tossed in, not discarded, they found the complete skeleton of an 8-month-old cat. Cats are not native to Cyprus. There were no wildcats on that island. Someone put that cat on a boat and carried it across open water, across the Mediterranean 9,500 years ago, before writing, before bronze, before any of the texts I've been talking about tonight. And that person buried the cat next to them, positioned with care, the way you bury something that matters. That is 5,000 years before the Egyptians started carving cat statues. 5,000 years before any civilization we'd call a civilization thought to write the word cat on anything. And here's the part that even the scientists can't make sound normal. Biologists describe the cat's path into human life as the commensal pathway. What that means is that unlike dogs, horses, or cattle, which humans captured, bred, and shaped over generations, cats were never domesticated by humans. Cats in the scientific framing domesticated themselves. They showed up near the grain, stores of early farming villages because the grain attracted mice, and they stayed because nobody chased them off. That's the standard explanation, but domesticated themselves is a strange phrase when you say it out loud. It means no human decided to bring the cat in. The cat just arrived and it stayed and it did work, and humans accepted the arrangement without ever having started it. Even in the scientific version, the cat was placed. Nobody did the placing. I want to say something definitive about why someone did that. I want to tell you it was for protection or companionship or something sacred that we've lost the word for, but I don't know. Nobody alive knows. No text from that period survives. I don't have a read on the why, and I'm not going to invent one. What were you taught about where cats came from? The school version, not the internet one. I'm curious whether anyone watching this was ever told anything besides Egypt. Here's what I will say, and this is what the whole video has been building toward. The Book of Enoch says the Watchers crossed a boundary between heaven and earth. They brought things with them that weren't supposed to be here. Metallurgy, cosmetics, sorcery, the knowledge of roots and plants. Chapter 8 names every one of those gifts, and everyone is described as a violation, a transfer from one side to the other that broke the rules of creation. Chapter 7 says the Nephilim sinned against animals. Not killed, not consumed, sinned against. The animal apocalypse lists nearly 20 species and assigns each one a theological role in the history of the world. The cat is missing. The Mesopotamian omens describe the cat as placed with no one doing the placing. The Islamic tradition says the cat was created by divine command to serve a specific purpose among humans. And the oldest physical evidence we have shows a cat carried across open water to an island where no cat had ever lived, buried with the kind of intention you give something you didn't just find on the ground. That's not a coincidence. It's a pattern. I can't close it. I looked for a direct textual link between Enoch's sin against animals and the Mesopotamian Shakanu construction, and there isn't one I can point to. The languages are different. The centuries don't line up cleanly. Nobody I've read has published on the connection. That gap is real and I'm leaving it where it is. But 4 separate traditions spanning thousands of years all describe the cat the same way. Brought, placed, given a job? Is the absence of cats in the animal apocalypse just an oversight, or does it tell you something the writer understood and we've forgotten? I've given you my read, I want yours. Why does every ancient tradition treat the cat like it arrived instead of like it was always here? And why does the one text that assigns a meaning to every animal leave this particular one out? You can read 1 Enoch chapter 7 tonight. It's free. When you get to verse 5, you'll find the phrase, sin against the animals. Read it slow. Ask yourself what that word is doing in a sentence where the writer had simpler options. Then go to chapters 85 through 90, the animal apocalypse. Count the species. Lions, leopards, wolves, eagles, ravens. Count them all. And then notice what's not there. The kind of animal that doesn't fit in a system built to hold everything is the kind that was never part of the system to begin with. The oldest cat burial on Earth is a body on an island where no cat should have been, placed next to someone who cared enough to carry it across open water and take it with them into whatever comes after. 9,500 years later, we still don't agree on why. The texts circle it, the traditions circle it, and the cat just sits there, the way cats do, not explaining a thing.